Hey everyone, Matey here. Today I'm going to show you how I created this image. A friend of mine, Moana, she came to me and working on something else. She said, "Oh, I've got this this bento mermaid tail that I've never unpacked." And I said, and I had these poses that I'd never used, so we put the two of them together. And this is what I came up with. So I started with this picture here and ended up here. I'm going to show you how I did it. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're going to start by removing the green screen. Using a background eraser tool set at 100% discontiguous. It's going to pick up every bit of green that's in that picture. And it's managed to do that without dissolving the fin on this mermaid, so that's good. Let's have a look. Alright, so I'm going to do a clipping mask over her hair and just paint back, because even though it doesn't look like it at the moment, I'm sure there's some green that's been spread through into her hair. So I'm going to take a sample of her hair colour, and on that clipping mask, which I have set to the blend mode of hue, I'm going to paint with a sample of her hair colour, the brown, at 100%, just on the edges here. And all those bits there where the green would have gone through. Alright, so I'm pretty confident that I won't have to bother about hair, wispy bits of hair, any colours bleeding through there now. So I'm going to do a stamp for those two layers, and we do that with Control, Shift, Alt and E. Now I can turn them off. So this texture here you can find on DeviantArt. This one's called Dissolved. I'm going to use that as my background. Okay, now I've got this picture here, which is the surface of the ocean. I found this on DeviantArt. It's by an unknown designer, so you'll have to go. You're gonna have to search for it. If you want to use that image, there's probably others you could use. Alright, so I'm going to transform that, and the only bit I want is the surface there. So I'm going to transform it by using a shortcut Control T. Then holding down my Shift key, I'm going to drag so that fits across. I'm going to put a layer mask on there, and with a black brush, I'm going to paint out the blue sky and the blue water underneath. Like so. So what I'm going to try to do is have a tail float cutting through the surface of the water here. So I'm just going to move that up higher with the move tool. I'm going to transform that and make it a little more shallow. Alright, I'm going to resize our model here. like that. Alright, so just okay. So I want this fin fluke to be coming out of the water, not right on the horizon. So if I left click on my model, Mo there, and on that tile, and left click on there, holding down the control key, we'll get a selection. Then on that water level with a black brush, I should be able to cut this out to somewhere around there. Okay, so now we have our tail coming through the water. Now the thing with water is that what's in the water is normally larger. It's an optical illusion, so it's normally larger. So I'm going to actually copy that tail. I'm going to take a actually I'm not going to copy that. I'm going to cut that tail. I'm going to paste it back. So I'm going to paste it in paste special, then paste in place back where it was. I'm going to transform on that and make it smaller. Like that. Now I need to make a selection and invert that selection and paint back the bits of the water that I cut out previously. So I'm going to go to select, invert, then on that water's layer mask with a white brush, I'm going to paint back there like that. Control D to deselect the selection. Okay, so I have this this PNG here. All right, so this is a again I found on DeviantArt. It's of water splashing, and it's nice and clean and cut out. So I'm going to use this. All right, so I'm going to select it, copy it, close it, and then paste it into my image by using the shortcuts. Control A to select, Control C to copy, Control W to close it, then Control V, and it paints it into my image there. All right, the shortcut I need to transform in this now is Control T. Now I want that to appear as though it's her tail cutting through the water there. So I'm going to resize that there like that. And it is the wrong color for this image. So I'm going to give that a hue and saturation clipping mask by clicking this little box at the bottom here with the arrow. That's one way of doing it. And reducing the saturation and putting the lightness up. So it's more like the color of water splashing. Alright, so that clipping mask only affects that layer there. Okay, now for the sky. I'm going to use this texture here. Again on DeviantArt. It's by somebody called Sirius. So again, Control A to copy, or to select, Control C to copy, Control W to close. Now I want this underneath my water layer, so I'm going to highlight that layer and then Control V to paste it in. I should have highlighted the layer below that water layer because that's where I want it, so I'm going to put it there. Now I'm going to transform this and move it to a position that I want, like that. And put a layer mask in the bits that are below the water. I'm going to paint out with black. Just like that. Okay, so while I'm noticing it, I can see that when I put that sky in there, I've cut out her tail. So actually, I'll just put her tail above that sky level. And there it is. Okay, so now I'm looking at the surface of the water there, and it's not quite matching what you'd expect the sky to be reflecting onto it. So I'm going to do some color adjustments on there. I'm going to use color balance. I'm going to start in the shadows. I'm going to slide the yellows across, actually make that a clipping mask because I only want to affect that layer. I'm going to slide the yellows across slightly. And in the mid-tones I'm going to do the same because I want kind of a bit of a yellow look, but that's looking a bit green, so I'm going to reduce the greens as well. Put the reds a little bit that way. Then on the highlights, okay, like that. We can always come back and adjust those later. Now I want to work on the highlights on our model. So I'm going to put a clipping mask, a curves adjustment clipping mask, and just work on the highlights. So I'm going to click on this little box here with the arrow. So I'm going to affect the model. I'll turn up the highlights, and I'm going to invert that layer mask there. And then with white, I can paint back and adjust those shadows. So I'm going to use a low opacity and flow, and I'll make a selection around there by holding down my control button and left clicking on a tile. I'm going to paint where the highlights are. To brighten up the bits that are facing the light from above. Okay, Control D to deselect. Alright, so you can see the highlights there. Okay, so now with my model, I'm going to do a bit of a blur effect because I want to keep her face and shoulders and chest in focus, and the rest of her is either towards the camera or further behind. So I want to give that a slight blur. Now I'm going to do that with something called the iris blur. So if we go up the filter menu into the blur gallery, there's this iris blur here. So I'm going to place this over her. So with the iris blur, you can see there's 4 little dots inside. Anything which is within those dots will remain in focus, and the rest of the image will go out of focus. But before I do this, I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to right click on her and make her a smart object, so that way I can always go back and change anything I need to if I need to. Alright, so she's a smart object now. Filter, blur gallery, iris blur. to do that, press OK. Alright, so this arm here probably doesn't need to be as blurred as the rest of her behind her there, so this way, by making her a smart object I can make some adjustments to that blur. So I've got a layer mask on the blur gallery there. If I turn it off, she's in focus. I'll turn it back on. Now on this layer mask with a black brush, I'm going to bring back a little bit of the focus on her arm. Alright, so this black brush is only set to 25%, so it's going to take a few passes. And her hair there can come back in more focus too, I think. Okay, let me zoom out a little bit. Now I have this water, it's called Underwater by Coco, again found on DeviantArt. I'm going to copy this, Control A, Control C, Control W to close it. Now I'm going to use 2 copies of this, I think. I'm going to start by putting one over the top, so Control V over the top of our Mermaide. And then with blending modes, I'm going to see how I can get this to fit in. So I'm going to start off with using the screen mode. Alright, so I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit. It's a little bit too bright. I'm going to give it a layer mask. I'm going to highlight my model. And there's a little bit here where the plants are coming through. I'm going to paint that out. Perhaps over a hand there. I'm going to make a copy of that layer. Control J. And I'm going to slide that in underneath her. I'm going to change that blend mode to soft light. Put the opacity back up. Okay. Okay, so it's getting to where I want, but the blue on her tail is a bit too overpowering in parts, and the blur's not quite fitting in. So I'm going to blur both of these slightly. I'm going to do them the same. I'm going to give them a little bit of a Gaussian blur. So just go to blur, Gaussian blur, and maybe at 3.4 pixels. I'll do the same for the top layer. And then I'm going to just muck around with the levels a little bit on our model. So I'm going to give it a levels adjustment as a clipping mask. So it's only going to affect her. Now I want the shadows to be a bit darker. So maybe I'll try with the mid-tones a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to paint a bit of those highlights back. So on the levels clipping mask, I'm going to make a selection around our model. I'm just going to bring back some of those highlights there where the highlight should be. And now I'm going to go back to the water surface layer. Just make a few more adjustments on there. So I want to clean up that little bit there on the horizon. So I'm going to use on the layer mask. Then on our little water splash mask, where are we there? Just going to resize that a little bit. Put a layer mask on that. I'm just going to fix up these straight edges here. Alright, so we're almost there. I'm just going to get a few more highlights back into her. So, okay, so let's do a stamp, Control Shift Alt and E. And we'll go to the camera raw filter now. So we do some adjustments here. Let me see if I can resize this so you can see it. So I'm going to turn the saturation down a little bit and put the vibrance up a fraction and turn down the clarity a little bit. Put up highlights and the whites. Press OK. This is before my final adjustments. This after. little bit too bright there, so I might just tone that down a little bit by putting a layer mask on there. And with a little bit of black, I'll just bring some of that back, take some of the brightness out, and the same up here. Another stamp, Control Shift Alt and E, and that's the picture. Hope you enjoyed.